first known rules of golf were drawn up in 1744 by the gentlemen golfers of Edinburgh in Leith, Scotland. Since then, the game has changed dramatically. Golf courses, equipment, and not least the rules. So where do I go when I want to learn about the rules of the game today? Well, I go to the Golf Rules Questions podcast with Blakey and Roscoe, of course. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode of the Golf Rules Questions podcast.
Hey everyone, welcome to episode 53 of the Golf Rules Questions podcast. You're back with your host, Blakey from Golf Rules Questions. And this week for episode 53, last week we had Stuart McPhee on for episode 52. This week we have him back again for part two. What is most interesting about this is that he has just recently refereed at two professional golf tournaments here in Australia, very close to Melbourne. And we're going to catch up with him and find out how he felt he went, what he learnt, what he expected, and everything more about these golf tournaments and this experience from Stuart. So welcome, Stuart, to two in a row. Episode 53. How are you feeling?
Thanks, Blakey. Great to be here. Thanks for having me back, which is very nice of you. I'm very well, thank you, and looking forward to this chat.
Well, actually, before we get into it, as is always the case, we need to answer your question, the Rules of Golf question from, or the GRQ OTW from 52, which was yours. If you would like to go through it, the question and the answer.
So paraphrasing the question, it was when Marcella hit from the bunker, ball ended up right next to the hole. With permission, Fraser marked Marcella's ball and just put it to the side, put it in his pocket, so the rest could putt out while Marcella's still raking the bunker. Everyone's now finished holding out except Marcella, who's now making her way to the green. Fraser puts the ball back on the spot, lifts up his marker. Marcella walks up, says, "You all done?" Yes, taps it in and holes out. Moves to the next tee. Marcella grabs her tee and a ball out and realises the ball that she has is not hers. Fraser had accidentally replaced the ball on the spot on the green for Marcella to tap in. And my question was simply, is there any penalty to either player, either Fraser or Marcella? And would you like my answer?
I absolutely would like your answer for that one. That was quite a tricky one.
So my answer to that question is, unfortunately for Marcella, she's going to incur the general penalty for that hole because she has played an incorrectly substituted ball, even though she never touched it. So under 6.3b1 talks about substitution and when you are and are not allowed to substitute a ball, and when you're required to place a ball on the spot. In accordance with Rule 14.2, you are required to use the original ball. There are some exceptions to that, but this is not one of them. And even though Marcella didn't mark it and put it back, there was another player acting with her authority because Fraser had received permission to mark the ball. So he's replaced it. And Marcella's aware of all of this, therefore acting with Marcella's authority. And if someone else breaches a rule, but under your authority, then it's the player that incurs the penalty, even though someone took those actions. So that's under 1.3C1. So unfortunately for Marcella, she's going to incur the general penalty.
And you did that all off the top of your head, Stuart, without even reading anything.
I just had a quick check for all those numbers before we started, because you said I had to answer my own question. So I did. I'd like to remember all those numbers. You do it better than me, but I like to remember all those numbers.
I usually write it down when I'm doing the podcast and just read it out because I don't want to make a mistake.
Okay. Well, I'm sure someone will pick us up if we've made a mistake.
That's pretty impressive. So, we episode 52, and we had a chat and just, how we met each other and, how we work together at the moment. And it just so happened that you were going to be refereeing your first professional tournament at the Vic PGA, the Victorian PGA down at Moon Links. What was your sort of first thoughts? Like, I know we sort of touched on it last week, but what were your sort of first thoughts and how this day or days, because you did do 1.5 days there, 2 days?
2 days.
You did do 2 days there. So what were your thoughts prior to the tournament as to what it was going to be like?
Well, firstly, I'll say a big thank you to you for having your role in that, because you certainly helped me getting that gig, and I'm incredibly grateful for that, and I'm sure I'll never forget that. So thank you to you for your role in, I know 1 or 2 people called you and said, "Who's this clown? Should he be on the stage?" And you've obviously said, "Yeah, no, he's doing okay with the rules," and what have you. So thank you to you for playing your role in making that happen. To your question, there was definitely excitement about, this is like the stage, but then there was apprehension, and there was a bit of anxiety. I'm not an anxious person by nature, but there was a bit of apprehension about, wow, this is actually now real players playing for real money. They haven't all thrown $5 in to win the comp at the end of the day. They are playing for legitimate, genuine. This is how they earn their living. They're playing for real money. And I saw that with apprehension, that I better get it right. If I'm called to a situation, and I was called to many on my 2 days, I better just get it right, because we need to make sure it is right and they're given the right ruling. And so that was my apprehension, was these guys are playing it for real. There's guys that have been playing golf a long time, because yes, a lot of them are quite young by my standards, but they're also, a few of those veterans that have played in the US a lot, and they've been playing golf and dealt with many referees over the years. There was that apprehension. So that was my looking ahead, looking to it, very, very excited, but there was also a little bit of apprehension that this is real, and this is not a discussion around the table after a game of golf at my club where we're just talking about something. This is actually quite, just a little bit more serious. So I just wanted to make sure that if I was in a situation I had to get a ruling, I wanted it to be right, and I wanted to get it right and give the right thing to the player.
So you had an interesting situation, and I'm not talking about a rule situation. You had an interesting situation on your scheduling alone, in that you were working a professional tournament on the Thursday, and then what were you doing on the Friday?
So you're right. So I did day 1 of the Vic PGA on the Thursday at Moona Links, which you and I were both there. We both rocked up in the car park at exactly the same time, right around 6:15 a.m., both having driven more than an hour to get there that morning. And we were both there 13 hours later with the final groups. So it was a very long day, but it was a buzz, and I'm happy to talk all about that. But the very next day, I was at another club in Melbourne at Commonwealth at 7 a.m. to do an amateur event, the Victorian amateur match, Port Phillip Open, an amateur tournament. So I did that next day till 1 o'clock. And could I notice the difference between those 2 days? Absolutely, I could. One was a bona fide. They're both championships. I don't want to downplay one over the other, but I mean, one was professional, and these guys are trying to earn a living, and one was amateur. So yes, scheduling, and then I had Saturday off and play golf, and then of course day 4 I was back at the Vic PGA, back at Moona.
What do you think? What are your sort of top 5 or the 5 biggest differences between that? Not necessarily that professional event and that amateur event that you were both at both. But what, just you've talked about the, money, bona fide, it's real, these are their lives. But just in terms of the background, the resourcing, the refereeing, the people running the tournament, what were the sort of the 5 standouts for you there?
Certainly, yeah. So I've got to say this. I told this story to a few people, but I followed you in on that first morning, on Thursday morning, 6:15 in the car park. It's dark, almost just getting light. I follow you in, and I say this with all positivity, and that is, you walked in as if you owned the place. And and I say that as a compliment, that you've walked in, but you knew exactly where to go, who to see, what to pick up for your refereeing for the day. You just have done this countless times, and I hadn't done this at a professional tournament. So I followed you in, watching you. Oh, you picked up that bit, you've grabbed the hard card, you've grabbed the tee times for the day, you've grabbed your radio, and then you've, of course, helped me and said, right, you need one of these, one of these, one of these. So there was all that. It was all just much more of a buzz, the support people, the people there coordinating everything, all the radio communications, the amount of people on the radio to talk to and discuss different things. That was clearly different to the amateur tournament. Yes, we all have radios, but, and there's a schedule for the referees. So I was given, holes A, B, C, and D and E. That was my area for the day. Whereas more the amateur events, it's more, you're it. So just rove, just drive around, follow the last group out or follow the first group out, or and we'll call you if we need you. And it could be, hey, someone needs help on the 15th hole. And I'm going, it's like 17 fairways. I've got to travel a fair way to get to that, but I'm on my way, whereas the professional event, it was, each 9 had a roving referee. Each 9 probably had 2 referees. There's 6, plus there's additional people. And I'm sure different tournaments at different levels have more than that, probably. You would know that more than I, but just the number of people on the ground, the number of people on that radio, the amount of support staff, the buzz. You went out to the driving range and saw a lot of people out there hitting golf balls, and there was just a buzz. And, of course, on the last 2 days, it was all the broadcast. So it was all the cameras and all the TV staff. And, even just coming in after that last group came in, and here's all the cameras in on the guys just submitting their scorecards, because that goes to TV. And I walked into our area, the official sort of tournament office, thinking, I'll just put my radio back and look. And here's all this buzz. There's people standing everywhere watching the last 2 guys put in their scorecards. So, and the camera's right there on them, lights everywhere. So, you don't see that at an amateur tournament. So I don't know if I've answered your 5 differences, but there's a bit of a taste of, what I saw as being very different.
Yeah, well, that's a good few points there. And I just want to, so on the Thursday, you were on holes 4, 5, 6.
4, 5, 6, that sounds right. Oh, so no, Legends course. Yeah, 4, 5, 6, correct.
And I think I was on something like 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 maybe, because it's quite funny. The two courses that we worked at, both the back 9s were quite up and down, and maybe one set of trees or one little bit of rough, that sort of, and you could see each other, see the players, see the referees, whatever. You could see on the back 9, you sort of had that one spot and you could see 3 or 4 holes, or 5 or 6 holes. Whereas the front 9 sort of jagged around, and it was very hard to see heaps of different flags and greens and stuff. So certainly at the Legends, getting from 4 to 6 green is a fairly, a big task, whereas getting from 11 green to 14 tee on the Legends course is fairly easy. So with you being on 4, 5, 6, it was also interesting because you say, we had referees here, there, and everywhere, but we were so, in terms of my experience, we were so under-resourced for referees at the Vic PGA. But we seem to get it done. You probably don't do as much timing as we'd like to do, especially with the amateurs as well. You give them encouragement to go along a little bit faster, but knowing that they're paying $1,500 for their 2 or 3 rounds, you don't want to. You want to make sure that they're coming back next year. Did you find that? Have you sort of been in a pro-am situation before, where they're playing, or just a spectator?
I haven't, no, but I just wanted to touch on one of your points. Is one of the things that completely surprised me was the focus on timing. And I reckon you hinted at it before we even got there, bring your stopwatch or bring your watch or something. And I didn't pick up on that. I couldn't believe the focus on times, and that, this is match 27. At the end of this hole, they need to be, this is the time. and the recording of, you know, -1, +2, -2, and seeing a trend, and for the tournament directors, you know, to come along and see if a group's at a place and, you know, if they're at a place by the time par. I didn't realize that'd be such a focus. That was a huge focus. And that really surprised me that there was such a focus on that time par and keeping the guys moving on, especially with a 2T start, you know, morning and afternoon session, and clearing out those, you know, clearing out the morning session so the afternoon session could start on time, all that. And then with the Pro-Am having 180 thereabout players to get through the course, it's pretty tight. And there was that real focus on, you know, on the radio, it was all the time was, how's that match 27 going? You know, where are they now? Where's the group in front? Where's the group behind? Because they're going from the office, or they're on the back 9 and I'm on the front 9. That was a real eye-opener for me. I thought that was a good thing. It was a real, and the players knew it. And one of the things that I think was a good thing, and you and I spoke about this at the last event, was, you know, I'd often just situate myself in a spot just so I could see a few holes in my area and be on alert, ready to go and help. But if you just happen, oh, you know what, I've been sitting here for 2 hours, I'll just go for a drive. I'll just drive down to the tee of this hole, or I'll go to the next hole. If you go for a drive and the players see you coming and you've got the gear on, you know, you've got the shirt and they know who you are, and you've got the radio, they know who you are, all of a sudden, at least one of them will go, oh, are we behind time? You know, are we running late? Do we need to catch up? They know that it's such a focus from the officiating point of view. And I know the players, you know, I'll just go up to one hole just to see how they're going. And one of them, oh, are we okay? Are we running behind, are we? Do we need to catch up? You know, that was their response straight away, which I thought was interesting.
Did you have to talk to anyone to get them to hurry up?
Definitely. Yes. Certainly the last event we did, there was one group miles out, you know, and I was asked to just go down and see them on the 15th. And I think that's a skill for me that I've learned is, you know, how do you approach them? You know, maybe one of them's having a really bad day. That's why they've had perhaps been delayed. Maybe there's been more than one ball search that they would like, and maybe one's had to take an unplayable because of that. So that's just pushed them back a little bit. So maybe they're on, you know, not having a great day and their mood's not great, and you're the one that has to go up to them and say, guys, you know, and I think the way I was taught just in the last week was, don't just come at them, right, guys, you are this. Just give them the benefit of the doubt and say, have you had any issues? Something happened in the last few holes. You know, is there a reason? You know, give me an out. Is there a reason why you're perhaps just falling back? And, you know, it would often be, oh, actually, we're looking for Ralph's ball, you know, on the last hole. He didn't play provisional, had to go back to the tee, or then he did find it, but then he had to take an unplayable. So that took a bit of time because he had to work out how he's going to do that. And so that gives them that, okay, guys, just, you know, you're falling back. See that group up there, they're the group in front of you. Just in the next hole or two, just pick it up a little bit. So, yeah, I definitely had to talk to groups about it, but I think they may not like it, but they know it has to be done. I don't think anyone puts up a concrete wall and fights you back. I think they're pretty accepting that it's a focus from the officiating point of view, and they're going to be reminded if they fall behind.
Did you see a big difference between the timing that you did at the Legends? Because I don't know what it was at the Open, but the timing that you did at the Legends and the timing that you did at Warragul?
Yes, there were probably the Legends, the PGA Championships seemed to move pretty well. Yeah, I think it seemed to move very well, even though there were amateurs in the field and it was a bigger field. And I know you told me how they'll just blame it on the amateur, you know, he's having a bad day, or, you know, he sprayed it right and we had to go and looking for it, and that put them back. Warragul, there seemed to be a lot more delays, I thought. You and I were there both the first 2 days, and, you know, one group was plus 20 something, you know, and you're coming through one particular hole, it was plus 11, then plus 13, then plus 15, and it just blew out. So even though the groups in front were behind by a long way, there was one group that was a long way back. And it all started with, say, the first group off the 10th tee in the afternoon session that were a little bit delayed. And then, of course, through no fault of their own, the groups behind were all impacted by that. And as you know, on your side, there were quite a few drivable par fours, you know, which they're sort of all waiting on the tee rather than having hit their shots already. But yeah, I saw the delay, and it was a much shorter course as well, which I found very interesting. Much shorter course, significantly shorter, and yet there were more delays, I thought.
Yeah, see, you were on the back nine. I was on the front nine. We had the delays of the cool-up holes. I mean, 1 was almost drivable. 3 had been driven by some of the bigger hitters on the first day. 4 was a call-up hole, a compulsory call-up hole. 5 could have almost been driven, but it was so tight around the neck coming into the green, so they mostly just laid up. 6, definitely, it was like 250-meter uphill par 4. And then 9 on the first day was definitely getting driven. And then on the second day, some of them almost flew it on the green. They were hitting 3-wood onto the green. So that was really interesting. But I thought the play, certainly for the front nine, was reasonably fast, and the players, the difference between walking from green to tee, and I said that right, from green to tee, where it's only 20 meters or 30 meters, whereas the Legends course, some of the greens to tee are 50, 60, 70 meters. That makes a massive difference. If the course is 6,400 meters, that's relatively long in Australia. I mean, the Open course is one of the longest, which they played on the Saturday, Sunday, is one of the longest courses in Australia. And that's 6,650 or something like that. Whereas Warragul, I think, would have been right at the tips, would have been about 5.8. So, that's that's so short. I don't even think it was around that. I mean, all these drivable par 4s and stuff like that. So the difference in time is huge. And then Warragul also, under the trees, we had no rough. So basically the only place you could lose your ball was up the tree. There were a couple of penalty areas, but basically the only place you could lose your ball was up the tree. So there's less searching for a ball. There was so much searching for a ball at Moona Links, like, knee-high grass, and amateurs as well. So the amateurs sprayed a little bit more. And there was lots of searching. So that's what I found. Like, I think the first day at the Legends course, we were plus 55, which is just insane, and happens just because it just keeps going out and out and out. Whereas at Warragul on the first day, we were -6. We actually finished under time, which is just unheard of. But yeah, the timing, I might have mentioned it, timing is 85% of our job. The rules and stuff like that, it's I enjoy that the most, but it's not a big part of the job. How did you go with your first ruling, and what was it?
Oh, jeez. What was my first ruling? I should remember this. I should actually put a photo or something in a frame. My first ever ruling in a professional event. I can't tell you now. It was what had been on. Oh, it was the penalty area one on the first hole. So the interesting thing about the Legends course is there were at least 2 holes. They put in a red penalty area on those holes, which are not normally there, and which of course the committee can do. So the first hole was one of them. And so all down the left-hand side, the second half of that hole, they put in a red penalty area, which is not normally there. All down the left of the fourth hole, they put in a red penalty area, which is not normally there. So I think it was the very first group. And guys teed off down the left-hand side, going for the green for his second shot, and he's just pulled it left. And it's gone into the grass you talk about, metre high, half a metre high, just impossible to find almost. Even if you found it, it'd be just difficult to get the club onto the ball. But anyway, it's still inbounds. And so this guy, I was at the back of the first green just getting my sort of rundown about, hey, this is your first event, this is what you need to do, just here's your red pen, do the timings, all this. I'm getting it from Langers. And this guy pulls it way left into the red penalty area. This guy's 300 metres away. Sure enough, what we learned later, played a provisional ball. Now, we saw the ball. He could have just been putting another ball into play, but it was a provisional, and he's put it just short of the green. So, of course, now they all go searching in there, and this is, you got called over the radio about this, was he's put the second one short of the green, the provisional. We all go searching over there. Then we've got, hang on, it's red stakes. So it comes back to the player now. Why did he play a provisional? Well, you play a provisional if your ball might be lost outside a penalty area or out of bounds. But it was clearly, it wasn't known, or it wasn't virtually certain, it was known that ball was in the penalty area. But only when the player got up to that area did he go, oh, hang on, there's red stakes here everywhere. My ball is clearly in that penalty area. I would put my life on the fact my ball is in there. So it was known, or virtually certain, that that ball was in the penalty area. So, of course, what are the options now? Well, the provisional ball's lying just short of the green, but that is out now. So that was probably the ruling. It happened all before I was even ready in ruling mode to go ahead and do anything. I was still getting my sort of briefing about grab your red pen and do the timings. So sure enough, we said it's known or virtually certain. We need to go back to where you just played from and either, one of your three options under 17.1D. Go back, which is what he did. Provisional ball got picked up and he went back and proceeded under the penalty area relief rule. That was probably the first one. I don't know if that was overly exciting, but the same thing happened on the fourth hole. Within the same group, the two professionals in that group both hit their balls left, both played provisionals, gone up there and gone, oh, didn't know this was a red penalty area. One of those guys found his ball, so it didn't matter anyway. It was in the red penalty area, so the provisional's out anyway, even if it wasn't a penalty area. And he's then decided, I think, to take penalty area relief. The other one he couldn't find, but it was mown closely up to that penalty area. It was pretty clear it was in there. And again, he just took penalty area relief. That was the same two professionals from the same group on that same hole right there and then. So I've heard you say this before, that you reckon the two most confusing rules for people both begin with letter P, provisional and penalty area. And then we've combined those two for my first three rulings, within the space of the first 2 hours of the event.
That's pretty interesting. I can't actually remember my first ruling at a professional event, so I wouldn't be fast, but I definitely remember that one, since it was just so big and easy to, not easy, just the first question you're asking the player is, did you know it was a penalty area? And the guy actually plays there, he's a member there. So he played there the day before that, the week before. It was never a penalty area, so
exactly
he didn't know. That's a good one. What was like on that kind of thing, where you start interacting with the players? What did you sort of learn from your interaction with the players? Is probably something that, because they are professionals, and what I mean by that is they play this game for a living, and some of them sort of know what you're going to ask or what you're going to say, and they sort of seem to be able to say the right thing to your questions. Do you get what I'm saying? When did you sort of pick this up?
Straight away.
With all your interactions.
So straight away was, I asked both those guys, did you know this was a red penalty area? And this is my first real experience with dealing with real people, because the amateur, I'm guessing, was his best mate. And the amateur clearly had some idea of the rules. And so all of a sudden I'm dealing with the amateur, his mate, clearly his mate, because he was leaping to his defence. And I'm saying, did you know this was a penalty area? And I hear from behind me the amateur go, oh, no, we didn't know. I said, okay, thank you. I'm just trying to establish the facts with the player. Anyway, fast forward a few minutes, and he can't play where it's come to rest. So he's going to take penalty area relief. I said, okay, all you need to do is identify your reasonable judgment, your best estimate of where it's last crossed the edge of the penalty area, because that's where we're going to decide on our options to take relief, if you want to take lateral relief, for example. And all of a sudden, again, from behind me, I hear his mate going, oh, yeah, it was right around there. And I'm thinking, it's almost the ball's turned left 90 degrees, as you've told me, penalty area relief is not the nearest point of relief, right? You don't get nearest point of relief under penalty areas. You get where did that last cross, and that last cross could be 200 metres away. So his mates, back here, and I'm going, okay, let me I'm just talking to the player for a moment. I think I did that as respectfully and as with courtesy as I could, trying to make it very clear that, look, I'll ask you if we need to establish more facts, because I'll get in everybody to try to work out the facts. But at the moment, I'm just dealing with the player. So you talk about interaction. So that was interesting. That was one of my first dealings, and I'm dealing more with the amateur than I was the actual player in question whose ball was in the penalty area. To answer your question a little bit more directly, I was sort of smiling when you were asking this question, because if you were to ask me my favourite part of the whole experience, it would be my interaction with players. All my interactions, and I had many over my first 4 days of professional events, all of them, bar one, were more than pleasant. Like, really, really pleasant. I felt like they were just grateful. They were in a situation where they needed help, and I was able to provide that assistance and help them get through their day, like continue on playing golf. And I saw that, and I said this before, most of them were what I think quite young. They're all in their 20s, most of them, a few in their 30s and a few my age and older, who have had extensive experience playing golf at this level and dealing with referees. But they're all more than pleasant, just really nice. They were grateful. They were, oh, thanks, mate, or thank you very much, appreciate it. I'm going, pleasure. I said often, that's my pleasure, happy to help. So it was great. It was my favorite part was here's a guy who has a problem and I'm able to help him. And, I did there quickly. You talk about, dealing with the players that I think, what I was taught on the very course that, my level 2 course, something Brian said, which I'm going to keep hold and use. He said, the first thing you should say to the player is, how can I help? The first thing you should say. So I've put that into myself. That's the first thing I'm always going to say to a player is, oh, how can I help? The other thing is never talk about their situation that they're in and go, geez, I'd hate to be there, or geez, I did that yesterday, and because I have no interest in that. So I've never done that and I never will. But it was, how can I help? Well, as you're saying that, they're already spurting out all the information to you. Like, you haven't even hopped out of your car to get to them, and they're already, and I've got to say, sorry, can you say all that again? Half of them are already, they're so keen to just get the situation resolved and get on, and they're already spurting out all this information to you, and you're not even listening to them yet because you haven't even hopped out of the car. You haven't even brought the cart to a halt, and they've already started talking to you. And anyway, so I found that quite interesting. But some of them were just waiting for you to get there. Oh, how can I help? Oh, well, I've got this situation here. Interestingly enough, the PGA Championship at Legends and Open, almost all of my rulings, bar 1 or 2, were called over the radio. It was a referee request on hole 4. I'm going, oh, that's me. Off we go, and the players are waving you down, it's over here, which is great. And you go up and how can I help? And, oh, okay, that ball's in play. Whereas, and I guess the nature of this course that we were just at over the last few days, a lot tighter, smaller. There weren't anywhere near as many requests over the radio for, hey, we need a referee on hole 15. However, I would have given more than 10 rulings per day, simply because I identified an area in the course where one hole, and you went up and drove and checked out the green on the 16th hole after play on day 1, and how that had all been set up. And there was a irrigation grate, plastic grate almost running along the edge of the green, and that marked it as GUR, and it just posed quite a few problems. There was also on that left-hand side of that fairway was just all trees. And, 1 in every 5 golf balls hit off that 16th tee ended up in that area. So there's a lot of ball searches. There was several unplayables from those ball searches. There was a toilet block left of that hole, which was, old concrete toilet block surrounded with bushes marked as GUR. So there were and I was just sitting there watching balls come off that tee. And whenever it headed into the trees, as the players come up, I'd go over there and be available and help with the ball search. And then when they found it, and they'd say, oh, what can I do with unplayable? I'd run through their options, their 3 options, and I'd go through that procedure with them, and I'd help them. They're going back. It was often back on the line because the lateral relief, they were still under the same massive tree that they just couldn't get at their ball. So they were often back on the line. So I'd help them with, okay, well, your ball's here, I'll stand here, the flag's that way, because they couldn't see the flag because of all the trees. So I actually made myself available. And as I said, I only probably got called on one, but I would have helped in more than 10 situations every day. Just to my left where I was parked was all this gravel path, and quite a few balls ended up on that path. And then we had the grate on that green. So I saw probably only 3 or 4, but if I saw the ball head left and trickle towards that area, I'd actually walk up to the green with them, knowing there was a reasonable chance one of them was going to say, what do I do here? And sure enough, that's exactly what happened. So I had just identified an area where there's going to be a few issues here, and there were, and I was able to help every single time without being called. And whereas compared that to Moona and Open, there wasn't a lot of that. It was more being called that, there was a few car paths, there was a TIO, and a few other things in the penalty areas.
Yeah, having that smaller course at Warragul where you had an vantage point where you could see situations were going to occur before they even occurred certainly helps. Whereas the Legends course tracks around property, and you can only, especially on the front nine, you can only see one or two. Like on that Thursday at the Legends, 14 just became a rules haven just for right hand side, and I even had someone take 2 unplayable drops. Like he knew from the start that he didn't want to go back to the tee, which probably would have been his better option, but he's decided then and there, no, I don't want to do that. Back on the line was absolutely stuffed. So he took 2 club lengths, and he worked it out before the 2 club lengths, before he dropped, that he would drop it, and then from where the ball ended up, he would drop it again. Like that was all, it was already in his mind. He was taking a drop within 2 club lengths. We worked it out. It was going to end, sort of roll down this part of the hill and hopefully end up here. And from there we would get, he would be able to get up onto this plateau with another 2 club lengths. So it was 2 penalty shots just like that. And now he was on this plateau hitting his 4th shot. It was really impressive. But that area was just an absolute haven for balls. The wind was blowing left to right. This tree just about 100 meters in front of the tee, we're just sort of pushing balls on that angle, and then the wind blowing left to right really sent a lot of people into that sand. So yeah, it was very interesting.
It's unusual. You wouldn't see that very often. It was almost premeditated.
Yeah.
That he's almost taking his own model local rule, that alternative to stroke and distance. He's almost taking his own version of that by coming out 4 club lengths.
Yeah,
so
that's right.
More playable area. Premeditated. Nice.
But the experience that you had, did you sort of see that, we all want the rules of golf to be black and white? Do you still think that to this day that the rules are black and white, or can be black and white? Or now that you've seen professionals play the game up, you're inside the ropes effectively for all that time, do you still have the same thoughts about it, or has it changed the way you see the rules of golf?
I don't think it has. No, not too much. I still see them very black and white. I don't think it's changed my view very much at all. I think just it can be different personalities in that, I obviously had an unfortunate incident with one player I was saying how all my interactions were more than pleasant except one. He didn't see it perhaps as black and white as I did, and he was taken back on the line for unplayable and wanted to drop it nowhere near on the line. And I made that perfectly clear to him that he was nowhere near it. And so he didn't see it as that black and white. He was just going back, thought, oh, this is okay. I think what it did for me was, to me, it was the reps, and I enjoyed getting the reps. And the number of times I gave someone, free relief off a car path, for me, I really enjoyed. To me, I saw all those situations the same. They all had interference, or their ball was lying on an abnormal course condition, and they could, take free relief from that. We found the nearest point, we took a club length and took a drop, and I saw all those things very similar, and I saw them as black and white they're probably, a lot of my rulings and unplayable on that 16th green. I think the different personalities can make it not so black and white, but I still see the rules as very much black and white. And what I found, interacting with these players is some can be a little bit grumpy, some are not having a great day, some will laugh that off, some don't laugh that off very, very well. So that's probably where it's not so black and white. It's the different personalities when you're helping those players, but I still see the rules very much as black and white, and you can do certain things and you can't do others.
Now, you had a situation that you're telling me about where the caddy walked ahead of the player to search for a ball. Do you just want to go through that as you detailed it to me?
Sure. So, it was one of those situations where the caddies waited right next to the previous green because the tee's now 100 metres back. So the caddies waited with the clubs at the previous green. The players grabbed his ball and tee and driver and headed to the tee. And the guys hit it way left, not out of bounds, but getting pretty close in an area. So sure enough, as the players are finished hitting off that tee, this caddy 100 metres forward next to the previous green picks up the clubs and starts walking to the area roughly where the ball is of his player who's just hit off the tee. And sure enough, he's already got to the area, and I thought, I could help here. I just thought, I know what the rule is regarding searching and when that time starts. And here's a guy who's played a lot of golf, but he doesn't know every rule, and he may not know this particular one, and I'm there to help. I want to help this guy. This guy could have a career in golf for the next 30 years, and this might save him. That was my attitude towards it. So the player's now passed me, and I thought, there's nothing else going on here. I'm going to go and spend a minute with this player. So I've driven off after him, and he's now heading in the direction through the rough. But his caddy's already in the area and is still 150 metres ahead. So I've gone up to the player, and this guy's young. I won't mention his name, but a young guy, smiling. And I said, do you mind if I just provide you a tip on the rules? And of course, he'd gone, yes, please, yes. Couldn't have been more receptive. And I said, just regarding your ball up there and your caddy's looking for it, I said, the search time has already begun. I said, the time for your search begins when you or your caddy arrive in the area of where your ball is estimated to be. I said, the time could already start and you're still 150 metres away from getting to that area and your search time has already started. I said, just be mindful of that. It might be worth your caddying just waiting for you at this previous green, wait for you to catch up, and then you go into that area together, because that's when your search time starts. Because as it stands, as I'm driving right next to you now, your search time has already started and you're not even at the area yet. And that's all I said to him. And he's gone, great, thank you. Didn't know that. Thanks for letting me know. I'll keep that in mind. And I've gone, fantastic. Like, I felt great. I felt like I've just helped someone. And I think that's part of our role, is to be on the course to help players navigate their way through the course if they get into a situation. But it can also be, in that sense, I wasn't providing a ruling. I was just providing him a small dose of education, which may just save him at some point in the future. And hopefully he remembers that. So that was the interaction. And he was very happy with that. And I drove off and went back to my spot in the shade under the tree.
It was quite interesting that you had that one happen, because it made me reminded me of a situation I had on the first day on Thursday at Moona Links. And it was actually a player that you just mentioned you had an interaction with. And he had his friend with him. His friend was just walking beside, because obviously this is a pretty low-level professional tournament with amateurs and there's no ropes. And so spectators can walk the fairways and that's all good. And this player hit it right on this hole, and his friend went forward to search for the ball. And then, another player was playing, so this player had stopped there and hadn't gone forward to search. Another player played, and this guy was still standing there. The player was still standing there with his bag. He was carrying his own bag or pulling his own trolley or whatever it was. And his friend had been looking for 2.5 minutes. And I just thought, well, that's, this guy's about mid-30s. He knows a little bit. And, with your interaction that you had with him, they learn where they can where they can use the rules to their best advantage. Because I'd sort of arrived at the area and was like, oh, is this guy caddying or is he just a spectator? I mean, if he's just a spectator, then the search time hasn't started. But if he's actually caddying, there was nowhere that I could actually say, yeah, that guy is caddying. He didn't have a bib on. He never once grabbed the buggy or trolley, but he was walking beside the player, never grabbed the clubs or anything like that. So he was clearly a spectator. But yeah, he'd obviously, the player and the friend had obviously had a chat and said, oh, you go up and search for it and I'll get you. And, the friend found it within the 2.5 minutes. And so the player never even had to search for it. But it was very interesting, very cunning by that player. Well within the rules, he didn't delay his own play in getting to the area to search. So it's well within the rules, but very interesting situation.
Interesting you say that about caddy, because you and I know that the caddy can breach rules as well, and it obviously goes on to the player. So after day 4 of the Vic PGA, the next 2 days I was doing more amateur refereeing for an amateur tournament to an amateur match play. And on the Tuesday morning, I was an assigned referee, my very first time of being assigned to a match for a semi-final match. And there's a few people around, and I introduced myself to the players and just said, nice to meet you, good luck. But I then very clearly wanted to say, who are your caddies? Like, who just identify your caddies for me. It's the first thing I did. And I just wanted to make it clear that, okay, so you're the caddy for that player and you're the caddy for that player, because I'm also watching you as well, because you're the caddy for that player. So I wanted to make it clear. So you talk about the mate, and he wasn't a caddy, clearly, but he knew, or the player knew, hey, mate, can you go up and search for it, please? Grab as many people as you can and search, because the time hasn't started yet. Because obviously, you know better than I do that, the caddy is, the player is responsible for the caddy's actions, and the caddy can breach as many rules almost as the player can, almost. And the player incurs the penalty. So that's why I wanted to make it very clear, who is the caddy? Who are the caddies? Because, you're part of this whole refereeing as well in this match.
Yeah, definitely. Now, you did mention that hole 16 at Warragul, and I posted a photo because I thought it was hilarious, where they've got this drainage grate on the green, and then it looks like it's been cut on the other side of the green to the same height as the green, but then there's text being written in spray paint, not the putting green. Can you explain the whole area situation there?
Well, I think you've explained it pretty well. So right on the edge of the green, left-hand side of this green, a tiny sliver, maybe no more than 30 centimetres wide, running along the left-hand edge, there was what looked like an irrigation covering, flat plastic grate, maybe about 10 centimetres wide, running along the strip, left-hand side of this green. The left-hand side, now we're away from the hole, even tinier slice of grass was cut to green length. Was cut, as the same length of the green. Beyond that was a bunker, and either end of this area were just a little bit thicker rough running down either side of this bunker. And there was text, and I had my very first ruling when the ball was in that area. So left of the irrigation, just in the closely mown area, as in the putting green sort of mowed length. And I've gone up there. I'm all excited. I'm doing this stuff for real now. These guys are making a living. How can I help? Oh, my ball's here. What can I do? And I have seen not putting green. And it immediately threw me, I'll admit. It immediately threw me straight away that I'm thinking, I've never seen this before. Now, I eventually worked my way through going, well, it's the general area. And then I see at one end, it's same spray paint, GUR, and it's all marked out. It just took me just that little bit longer to sort of process, what part of the course where is the ball lying? What part of the course is the ball lying? And therefore, what are the options? And then I was able to say, okay, you can play as it lies, or we just need to find the nearest point of relief. but not on the green. There's been a general area. So it's just, I admit, it threw me when I saw not putting green. It could have easily been mistaken as putting green because it was exactly the same length grass as the green.
Do you know how it came about that they had to draw or write text on there, not putting green?
I do, but I don't know if you want me to share that.
I do, actually.
Do you know how it came about?
Usually it's not cut, and they decided to ask the greenkeeper to cut it. Is that correct?
That was my understanding. Was to the members, normally that area left of that little bit of irrigation grate is not mown to the same length as the putting green. And it is just that first cut of rough around the fringes of the green and around the bunker. And they did mow it. And then afterwards they've gone, maybe it shouldn't have been mown down to putting green. It could easily be mistaken as the putting green. So that's why they've written not putting green. And just having never seen that before on a course, it just threw me. I know there's 5 defined areas of the course and not putting green is not one of them, you know, so it just threw me for a second.
Oh, that's pretty good. So out of all this, would you, if you had an amateur tournament or a professional tournament, scheduling, they're both scheduled on the same day, and you had the choice of two, what would your answer be now, Stuart?
It's so obvious to me what the answer is. I'm just laughing as you ask that question. It is so obvious. And that day one of the Vic PGA, there was a buzz. And it was such a different feeling to an amateur tournament. And I felt like, and I'm not ashamed to admit this or embarrassed to admit this, I felt like it was the big time. I felt like it was more real. I felt like what I was doing has more consequences. There is more, the stakes are significantly greater. That's how I felt. So I felt like it was a massive step for me to be in a situation where the rulings that I'm giving have consequences that affect money. So if I was to have a scheduling conflict in the future, to me, and I don't like this term, but I know a lot of people use it and understand it, it would be a no-brainer. To me, it'd be very, very obvious that if I want to keep doing this for a long time, I want to be in the spotlight. So for not me personally in the spotlight, but at the events where, you know, I want to be at the big events. Sorry, I never want to be in the spotlight as a referee, but because I don't think that's where they should be. But sorry, I hope that doesn't be misinterpreted. I want to be where the events are significant and they're major events and they are a big deal. That's where I want to be. So it's pretty obvious to me.
So if I were to ask you a question, and I did this deliberately, would you like to referee at the Oz Open?
Yes.
Now, if the Oz Open, would that be the pinnacle for you? Or do you reckon you reach higher? Or want to reach higher, I mean?
I would definitely want to reach higher, but if I got to that level, I'd be thrilled.
Now, if the Asian Amateur, do you know the Asian Amateur? Do you know what that tournament is?
I do not.
So the Asian Amateur is played around the Oceania, Asian and Oceania countries every year, and the winner gets an invite to the Masters. And possibly, correct me, possibly the Open Championship, but the winner gets, some big invites. Now, if that was scheduled at the same time as the Australian Open, a professional event, which is big in Australia, or an amateur event, which is big in the world, which one would you choose then?
I don't know. I would seek the assistance from my mentors. I would definitely, you've set me up there. I would definitely ask around and say, you wouldn't believe it, I have a scheduling conflict. I have this event and this event. What do you think? I would definitely go out. I would ask you, I'd ask other people. I would say, what do you think? And hopefully I'd get a 5-0 vote.
See, I've refereed the Youth Olympics. That's probably my biggest amateur event that I've refereed, and that was awesome over in Argentina. And would I do that? I mean, no offense to the Vic PGA, but I would do that over the Vic PGA. I probably would do it over the Australian Open. New Zealand Open, maybe not, just because I just love the New Zealand Open so much. But then again, if it was, any PGA tournament in the States, I'd probably do the PGA tournament. I'd probably do a European tour tournament over that kind of amateur event. But what I found, which is the funniest thing, is the bigger the tournament, the more referees they actually have. And so sometimes you've only got 2 holes to cover. Plus there's a front 9 rover, back 9 rover, and a general rover. What did we have on the Friday? The Friday at the Vic PGA, we had 3 referees for a resort style course, which was just, that was Friday afternoon, which was just incredible that we were able to sort of look after it then. And then, timing of groups does fall away because, you don't want to time a group into a weight. And then you get called away for a ruling. Timings do fall away a little bit when you're understaffed. Whereas, when you have 10, 11 referees, you know what the group behind is doing, you know what the group in front is doing, because people are talking to you, and you can say to this group that you've got on the clock, you need to hurry up. And they say, oh, but we did this and this, and you go, no, you didn't. I saw that you didn't have that issue at all. A common one that you might get is, the more you do it, is, I had a 3.5 minute ruling with the referee A, and you're like, no, it was about 20 seconds. He's just told me on the radio. So, there's 3 minutes that you've wasted. They're always quick to blame a ruling. They'll call in. This is one of some of the cunning players. This is one of their ways in how to sort of get themselves out of a pace of play situation, is to say, I need a ruling, and it's like the simplest ruling ever, sprinkler head, or they just want to talk about the condition of a bunker or something silly like that. They're as cunning or as smart as, because they've been on the tour for a long time, and they know how to sort of get away around these types of things. But, all in all, Stuart, sounds like you're still keen to do a lot more. What do you reckon's next? Just, is there anything that you will go away from this and, start reading or start learning or start doing to sort of further educate yourself to be better next time you come out?
I think I will just keep learning, obviously. I think I'm now a better referee than I was 4 days of tournament play ago, simply because I've had those reps of going up to players, dealing with them, helping them out, and going through that, and I've seen on TV for years, with the walkie-talkie with the aerial, the antenna, and pointing at the nearest point, and then, marking that out using the radio. I actually quite enjoyed doing that, having seen many people on other tournaments do that. I think I'll just keep maintaining. I must maintain, there's going to be a standard, an expectation that if you're at these professional events where people are playing for money, you can't let your knowledge just die and wither away. You can't let that happen. And I'm sure many people, who've done a level 2 course and done the occasional pennant hosting or whatever it might be, don't maintain that standard. And I want to maintain that knowledge, if not just keep building on it. And I think I have built on it just the last, two tournaments that we've done. No, it'll just motivate me even more to just keep it up and keep going and keep doing a quiz every day and keep reading. And, even just, you asked me to do a GRQ OTW 5 minutes before we started recording this. So I've written that up, and I've quickly just gone to the rule to read that. And I've just reaffirmed that into my mind of what that rule is. So, Yeah, just I've got to maintain it. I've got to keep at it. Absolutely. If anything, it's inspired me even more to keep at it and to make sure I know. And, one thing I wanted to say was one of the things that I loved about the last two tournaments is the spot quizzes over the radio. So I even had the tournament director come out, I'm in a quiet, not doing anything, and he puts a couple of radios or a couple of balls on the ground and says, right, what's the ruling? And fortunately, I was able to do okay with those. But these spot quizzes, that's fantastic. So I enjoyed that as well. But that's the motivation, I didn't want to get any of those wrong. So I've got to keep it up. I've got to maintain the learning.
I must say that never happens. That never happens because we're usually doing a lot of timing. It was just rare that this course was running at a good time. The players were running at a good time, so we were sort of just filling our day with how can we, because we had a few rookie referees. Langers obviously wanted to make sure his skills and knowledge were up to date. He'll always say, I've forgotten them, or I don't know them anymore. That, he might have forgotten one or two like we all do, but his knowledge is as good as they come. He's been there for 30 years, and and Trevor the same, and they've actually been involved in rule changes, situations that happen on the tour that you just go, this is not covered. This is 20.3 or whatever it is, or it's a hybrid of this one and this one. They've been involved in those kind of things where 4 years later, 2 years later, 4 years later, you'll find the rule changed to what they believed it should have been. That's really interesting, so that kind of experience, that knowledge, listening to that on the radio on Friday mainly was awesome. So no, it's I hope you had a lot of fun doing it. So do you have this GRQ OTW 53 for me ready to go?
I do. You happy for me to read that out now? I'm guessing?
Yeah, go for it.
So this GRQ OTW number 53, I've just got it right in front of me here to read out. So I'm putting. Stuart is putting, and as his ball begins towards the hole, Ross, seeing the line of the putt, believes his own ball marker will be in the way. Ross quickly measures one putter head length away and moves his ball marker out of the path of my ball in motion. The ball does not strike Ross's ball marker. Is there any penalty to either player?
Oh, that's a good one. That must have been like one of the biggest putts in history. for Ross to be able to measure his one putter head length away, and
he was very fleet of foot. He was very quick.
Yes. Unlike Ross. So he'll be listening to this too. Hey, Ross. Hope you like your hat. So thank you very much, Stuart, for part two of Stuart McPhee. Part two of Stuart McPhee and involving himself in refereeing. And I thought you did a fantastic job. And as you said before, never stop learning. And hopefully you're looking forward to your next opportunity.
Thanks, Blakey. Thanks for having me on again and having me back. And again, publicly, I can't thank you enough for you helping me with the rules, but more so just recently putting in a few good words for me and getting me onto these professional events. So thank you very much. I've had a blast. It's been a great experience, and I hope I can do many more in the future. So thank you.
No problem at all. And that ends GRQ podcast episode 53. And I just want to say, I did say this to Stuart, there's only two types of referees. Those that have made a mistake when they're refereeing, and those that are about to. So just remember that. It's a very tricky game when you're a ref. So it's always best to just continually keep learning. And then, as we've said before, the rules will eventually change again and you'll have to relearn them. So thank you very much, Stuart, and thank you everyone for listening in. Hope you enjoyed it.